We can now, I think, continue with the next presentation about the overview of forest certification. So now we're going to go deeper in the how the forest certification is functioning and what are the different forest certification schemes, whether legal or sustainable. So first of all, how the forest certification is functioning, and first of all, what is the origin of forest certification? The forest certifications find its roots in the 80s when people are starting to be concerned about the forest and problem of main issue about forest, about deforestation, heavy pollution, erosion, desertification, and so on. So during this period, there was a kind of boycott of tropical wood to avoid such issues, but it's rapidly came that the boycott was not a solution because it was not ending the conversion to agricultural land. It slowed down the development of tropical producing countries, and mainly southern producing countries. The markets decided to choose other materials like concrete, aluminium, and so on, which are not so ecological as well. So it was not a solution. And during this, and from this period, there was a kind of awareness about the certification, about the forest issues and forest management. And there was different summits, like Rio Summit, or different conference about the forest management. And during this period, there is two kind of initiative or tools which burst regarding the forest management, the sustainable forest management, and legality, and fighting against illegal wood. There was some private and voluntary processes like forest certification, and also institutional market impacting policies like FLECT Action Plan, Lacey Act in United States, and other initiatives in other countries in the world, like in Australia, Japan, and so on. So the first main initiative raised in 1994 with the creation of FSC, followed by PEFC, and then the institutional tools. So the certification scheme rooted in the concept of sustainable development, meaning a process which is able to find a balance between economic and social and environmental issues in order to get something which is relevant for these three components. And the certification is a tool which has been designed for forests in order to guide the markets. It is a market tool to impact the way of managing the forest at the origin, and enable to come back from the product, the final product, to the forest. The forest certification schemes laid on the way to identifying the wood to help the consumer to choose the good wood, the wood coming from well-managed forests or legal forests. So the specific purpose of forest certification is to attest the quality of the forest management. This quality could be sustainable or legal. This is two levels of the quality evaluation of the forest management, and to help the consumer to choose the better products. So it means that there is an audit of the forest activities directly on site to verify the compliance to requirements about sustainable or legal management. And what are the means to transfer this information from the forest to the final consumer? It's to link the forest certification to the consumer along the supply chains, which could be very complicated. We will see that after. By auditing the trading or the processing companies to verify traceability of certified wood inside these companies, and a system to mark the product with kind of labels in order to identify them when the consumer wants to buy a final product. So this is something to illustrate the two level or two type of certification there is in forest certification scheme. There is first of all the forest certification scheme at the level of the forest, which certifies the way of the forest, the management of the forest. It means that the products coming from the forest are able to be labeling and identified as such. And then all the different steps in the supply chain, we are here in the very simplistic supply chain, all the supply chains must be certified and the products can be identified as certified until the final consumer to help him to choose the good product. A consumer, when he's buying a certified material, meaning a material with or a product with a label or a logo, is able to know that this wood is coming from a forest which has been legally or sustainably managed. So let's talk about the forest management certification. So the first part of forest certification scheme. The target of such certification is, of course, the forest manager, forest owner, logging companies, association owned some forests, and timber companies when they are in charge to managing them. This operator has to be certified if they want to sell certified products. So the means of this forest management certification is to make field audits in the forest itself to verify the compliance with some requirements which are described in the forest management standard. About this forest management standard, as we said previously, this is a set of requirements which usually addresses a large wide range of economic, environmental, social, technical aspects of the forest management, specifically for the sustainable forest management. And usually these standards are presented under kind of different level of requirements, which name are principles, criteria, and indicators. The more we are going deeper in the details, we are going to the level, indicators level to have some requirements which are more applicable on the field. If we are comparing forest management standards for legal certification on left and for sustainable forest management certification on the right, usually in legal certification standard we find this is the aim of the legal certification, to verify the legality. So all the the legal thematics which should be covered are described in the legal certification standards. And it's usually cover the legal existence of the company, the right of access to the resource and harvesting, the tax and fees, forest management and logging operation, environment, worker rights, and third-party and local community rights. And there is also usually requirements about traceability of certified products, control of illegal activities carried out by third parties, and some requirements about management system. Regarding a sustainable forest management standard, we found all the legal evaluation in one specific principle. Okay, this is the very first level of requirements in the forest, in the SFM standard. This is the compliance with the law, and there is a lot of other requirements which are going above the minimum legal requirements about working and living condition, about the forest management plan, which should be sustainable, about how to implement and monitor the operation to reduce the risk of damage on the ecosystem and the forest, to reduce the impact, the environmental and social impact. So it's going usually above the minimum legal requirements. So a few comments about these two types of standard, the legal standard and the sustainable standard. Usually the main legality forest certification scheme covered the 5 legal areas of EUTR, the right to access, the logging operations, tax and fees, commerce and trade, and so on. It usually cover all this area. And what is the difference? It's the level of details of the requirements concerning these 5 levels of area. And usually the level of requirements depends on the level of the requirements of the national regulatory frameworks. But even with that, usually in practice, the audit and the checks which are doing on the field by the certification body and the auditors usually go beyond the strict national legality or local government checks. Meaning, for example, if there is requirements about the low impact, reduced impact logging, for example, sometimes there is few words in legal framework about the company have to apply the reduced impact logging, and no more detailed. In the legality certification standard, usually this requirement is very deeply verified on the field during the logging operation, if there is clear procedure and a way to minimize the risk of impact on the forest and so on. So even the information is very lightly mentioned in the legal framework. During this audit, the control are clearly beyond what is usually controlled if we are speaking about low governance countries. In the SFM certificate and in the SFM standard, as I said, the very first rule of an SFM standard is to comply with the national regulation, meaning it includes all which have been done during a kind of legality certification scheme. And usually the compliance with law and regulation, it is one principle or one criterion in the main SFM standard, like in FSC or PEFC. The other requirements, as we said, about environmental, social, and so on, which are going beyond the legality, are always assessed on the basis of what is legally required. The certification never went against the law. It's not a substitute to the law. And what we can observe that usually the legality requirements are less detailed in SFM certification, because usually this is one big principle saying that the company should be comply with the legal requirements. And in legality certification scheme, usually these requirements are more detailed because this is a core of the standard. But it doesn't mean that the evaluation will be different on the field. Talking about the chain of custody. Chain of custody, which is the second part of the forest certification scheme in order to transfer the information of the certification of the forest to the consumer. So the aim is to ensuring that the wood or the wood fiber or the non-wood forest product, but coming from the forest, contained in a product or a product line originates from certified forests. It means that all entities in the supply chain must be certified. And what are we calling as a link in the supply chain for certification? It's each time there is action of purchasing or selling, meaning each time there is an invoice. When a company trading or processing purchase certified wood and receive an invoice for its supplier, then selling its product to a client and issue an invoice, this is one link. It's considered like one entity. It means one certificate. And this applies also for the trading companies, trading activities without physical possession. Though, you know, there is some trading activities, meaning that the trading companies is based in Europe and it's purchasing wood in Cameroon and selling in UK without seeing and taking physically possession of the product. But as he is legally and commercially owner of the product by purchasing and selling it, he should be certified. In this case, the certification will be more a documentary audit, but he should be certified and get a certificate and a certificate code in order to sell this product as certified. So about chain of custody, which organisms are the targets of the chain of custody? It is all companies trading or processing certified wood and wood fibers. The mean for certification, chain of custody certification, is to audit the companies on site or documentary, if we are talking about activities without physical possession, to verify the compliance with the requirements of another standard, which is the chain of custody standard. Usually the chain of custody standards are very close to one certification scheme to another one. The PEFC, the FSC, OLB, legal standard, legal source standard, and so on, regarding chain of custody requirements, usually address the same issues. Usually you find in a chain of custody standard the chain of custody method, meaning the accounting method, how to control and monitor the quantity and the certified material itself in the company and in the processing process. There is some general requirements about the scope, the product groups, the sourcing, how to verify the sourcing, how to identify the input and outputs, the volume account control, and how to sell and deliver the product. There is also management system requirements, meaning defining procedure, defining an organization, responsibilities, training the people in the company to implement the traceability. And there is also a requirement for non-certified product in case of mixing, and we will come to that later. And of course, the labeling requirements, how to use the label on products to sell them as certified. Here are the three main accountable chain of custody methods, which are usually used in the different type of chain of custody standard. The very first one, this is a segregated wood flow, meaning the physical separation or transfer in FSC. It means that at any moment, the non-certified wood could be mixed with certified wood, meaning there is no mix of the different categories of supplies. It's this kind of method is used in order to sell 100% certified products. The second accountable method is a percentage mass of total wood flow. It's what we usually name the credit method. It means that there is certified wood and there is another category of wood of supply, which name controlled wood in FSC, or controlled sources for PEFC, or acceptable wood in OLB, and so on. Most of certification schemes define some specific requirements about a non-certified product which can enter into a final certified product because it is too complicated because of the processing to separate the inputs. It's possible to mix certified wood with non-certified wood, but this non-certified wood should fulfill some specific requirements of verification. So in this method, there is part which is certified, part which is controlled, and it's come together into the process line. And at the end, the company can sell a part of this production as certified 100%, but mixed, because in the final products you are not able to see if there is wood coming, the wood coming from the certified supply and the wood coming from the controlled wood supply. And the last method, it is a percentage of total wood flow. The percentage method, meaning, for example, the input is 70% certified, meaning that it is a mixed. It is a mix with a minimum level of certified materials. All the wood are coming into the process or to the company, and it means that you can sell all the production with the same percentage than the inputs. Again, the part which is, we don't know which one is non-certified, but the one which is non-certified is always controlled. So there is something you have to understand, that it is not because a company is chain of custody certifying that it means that all the product it's selling are certified. For example, a company can be chain of custody certified and have two lines of production. One line is certified, one line is with certified materials, and one line is with non-certified materials. It's really important to understand that if you are supplying wood from a certified company, a chain of custody certified company, it doesn't mean that all the wood or the product it will supply to you are certified. And another point is that you have to be very vigilant is that all certification schemes allow to mix certified material with non-certified materials, but this non-certified should be controlled, and the level of verification for this controlled wood may vary between the different certification schemes. And you have to understand that in a company which is chain of custody certified, but for a partial production, the auditor will check very accurately the flow of the certified product, starting from the entrance in the company during all the process until the selling point. And he will not have a specific look in the line which is not concerned by certification product. He will have a look if the certified products are coming into the same line, and he will check if there is proper procedure in order to clean the line between one certified production and one uncertified production. But he will not verify the origin or the origin of the non-certified wood if it is not included in a certified production. That's why it is important to identify in your supplier what is the scope of its chain of custody certification, and if there is other type of production which is not included in the scope of the chain of custody certification. So in practice, it could be really complicated because we know how the supply chain is working in the wood sector. One company may source product from different type of suppliers, different type of species, different type of products. Even in the certification supply, in the certified supply chain, there is different claims, meaning wood certified, controlled wood, recycle wood. So that's inside the certified supply chain, there is also different type of products. Depending on the level of processing, it could be difficult to coming back to the origin. You have to understand that the chain of custody certification will certify the traceability of the certified product in a company, but it will not allow you to verify all the supply chains. The requirements in chain of custody certification require to identify the origin, the country of origin, and the species of the product. But it is not compulsory to track the different step in the supply chain, meaning to identify the different suppliers from the last one until the forests. It means that when you are using certification in your due diligence, you still need to identify the different steps in the supply chain if it is necessary, for example, for high-risk country. Another point which can sometimes be a little bit confused for people. In EUTR, we are talking about due diligence system. And the purpose of our webinar is to explain how to use the certification, the third-party certification, within a due diligence system in order to answer to the EUTR. But we can also hear about due diligence system in other situations, and due diligence may also be used inside some certification scheme. It means that you have to be very clear that the due diligence system is not a specific concept or definition or something which owns to the EUTR. Due diligence system is an approach of how to manage the risk, which type of risk we are talking about. So EUTR due diligence system is not something specific to EUTR. It is an approach which can be used in various situations. For example, when a chain of custody certified company supply certified wood, and non-certified wood but want to mix these both supplies, as I said, it needs to verify the non-certified wood to see if it is at the level of controlled wood. And usually in the main certification scheme, the way to verify the controlled wood, it is applying the due diligence approach. In the FSA standard for controlled wood, you can find the similar steps than in due diligence: collecting information, risk analysis, reduction of the risk. In the PEFC chain of custody standard about the controlled sources, they name that the PEFC due diligence system. So even in certification scheme, the due diligence approach can be used. There is other situation. This is a situation we are talking to today. An operator wanted to place on the European market a product may apply due diligence in order to be in accordance with EUTR. So in this case, due diligence approach is used to comply to the EUTR requirements. This is something regulatory. Another situation, still in the EUTR process, you know that there is some monitoring organizations, which are organizations agreed by the European community to help the operator to apply the EUTR. These monitoring organizations, like Preferred by Nature, Bureau Veritas, LCB, the French Federation, and so on, this monitoring organization usually develop their own due diligence system to propose it to the operator to be able to apply and to fulfill to the EUTR. So monitoring organizations develop their own due diligence system according to EUTR requirement, but this is another due diligence system. Another situation, individually, some operators may apply the due diligence approach in order to verify something to their supplier. It is an approach which can be used for different purposes. For example, verifying, I don't know, the quality of a wood, and you will apply the same level of approach, meaning collecting information, meaning analysis the risk that the product is not fulfilling some requirements, and then mitigate the risk by, I don't know, verifying the supplier and so on, even if it is not in the case of EUTR. And last situation, there is also possibility for an operator, a company, to make its own due diligence approach certified by a third party. There is due diligence certification, such as legal source of Preferred by Nature. This is a certification to guarantee that the company is able to manage the risk of illegality. It is something which is voluntary. It is not something which is required by the EUTR, for example. It is, of course, a good tool for the company to fulfill with the EUTR requirements, but you can find a certification of due diligence. What I am explaining you that is meaning that due diligence may be used in different process by different tools or initiative, but the approach is the same, but it's not something specific to the EUTR. And the final thing I want to explain that it doesn't exist an EUTR certificate. We can find a due diligence certification, but not an EUTR certificate. If a supplier is providing you an EUTR certificate, it's a fake. It doesn't exist. So now let's go through the different forest certification scheme which exists. First of all, a little scheme to explain the difference between voluntary tools and regulatory tools, which are mandatory. On the left, this is all the voluntary tools which are the certification, whether they are legal or sustainable. On the right, this is all initiative, regulatory initiative, like public procurement policy or all other regulation fighting or prohibiting illegal wood on their markets. There is also an institutional initiative regarding more sustainable sustainable level like CITES or public procurement policy, but many of the institutional initiatives are against illegal logging. It's really important to situate where the certification is acting. So there is a lot of certification scheme and with a lot of logo, and sometimes it's difficult to not be confused about what are the guarantee and what this certification or the schemes are covering. There is sustainable management scheme, and for now there is 2 international sustainable forest management scheme, which are FSC, PEFC. There is only these 2 ones. But inside the PEFC, which is a system which endorses some national certification scheme, you can find a national certification scheme like SFI in North America, CERFLO in Brazil, and TCC in Malaysia. All these certification schemes exist by themselves. So it could happen some product with some logo with these schemes, but all these certification schemes are endorsed by PEFC, meaning that product which is SFI certified may carry on PEFC labels. Concerning legality verification scheme, there is the mains we are talking about are legal source from Preferred by Nature, OLB from Bureau Veritas, TLV from Control Union, and legal harvest from SCS. And there is other type of logo you can find which are not legality verification schemes, like GFS, which is more a consultant office, or the former SGS system, which is not used anymore, or the carbon neutral of Preferred by Nature, or COROUT, or some other initiative. Be careful, because sometimes it's maybe confused. These other product or system are not functioning like a certification scheme. This scheme is also to better understand what are the scope and the guarantee of the different tools existing about forest management. This is the level of guarantee here on the top. Starting from no insurance to the guarantee of a sustainable forest management certification. And between these 2 levels of guarantee, starting from the origin to the legal verification and legal certification, you can see here the scope of the main tools like certification and EUTR and VPA process. FSC and PEFC, so the Sustainable Forest Management Scheme, cover all the guarantee until the Sustainable Forest Management. Certification like OLB, TLV, legal source, and its annex covering all forest legality certificate until forest legality certification. Control wood, PEFC DDS, meaning all the requirements for non-certified wood are going just to some information for legality and origin, but are not third-party verified. So that's why it's not covering this level of guarantee. EUTR DDS, it can go far. It depends on the level of the system which is developed by the operator. And FLECT VPA are at the level of timber origin and legality verification, because there is no third-party verification, unless exception in Indonesia with the national certification scheme. So let's talk about the main certification scheme, the FSC. I will not get too much in details, but this is the first one which have been created in 1994 in Oaxaca in Mexico. It is a body which is organized in 3 types of chamber: economic, environmental, and social, in order to bring together all the concern of all different parties. And FSA has developed a principle and criteria for forest management, meaning this is the main structure which is used to evaluate the forest all over the world. But FSA required to adapt this principle and criteria at the local level. These are the 10 FSA principles which are dealing with environmental, social, economic issues. But first of all, you have to note that there is the very first principle, which is compliance with the law. It means that this is here the level of the legality certification, and then FSC is going beyond with all other type of requirements. Few information, few data about FSC certification in the world. Certified area is more than 200 billion hectares, and there is almost 50,000 of chain of custody certificates. And in the map here, you see the green, the dark green. It is where there is the most certificates or forest certified areas. PEFC. It is also a non-profit organization established in the 90s, in 1990, also organized with 3 membership chambers. But the difference with FSC, it is an umbrella organization which endorses national forest certification scheme. Up to date, there is 48 endorsed national certification scheme in different countries in the world. The development of the forest management standard is based on the benchmark, the PEFC Sustainable Forest Management Benchmark, which is kind of guidelines, but it is not a standard like a FSC principle and criteria. And this benchmark have to be used by the national certification scheme to elaborate its own forest management standards. Few words about the main, not requirements, but orientation, which is provided in the FSC PEFC Forest Management Benchmark. There is different thematic. The requirements about operation are covered by some 6 criterion about the different operations requirements which should be addressed in the standards about forest resource and so on, biological and socioeconomic. So we can find again the different the 3 components of the sustainable development: economic, environmental and social issues. But you have to note that there is also guidelines about the compliance requirements according to the legal framework, national legal framework. So this is again a basis to be legally compliant. Few words. So certified area for PEFC is more than 300 billion. There is more than 12,000 chain of custody certification. You see here where are located the main certified area, and mainly in the north part of the world and in South America. It's starting in Central Africa. There is one certificate in Gabon with the PEFC Gabon, and there's an initiative to develop a Congo Basin PEFC scheme, a regional PEFC scheme, which is ongoing to be endorsed. Few words about the different approach between FSC and PEFC. FSC has a top-down approach. As I said, FSC defines the FSC principle and criteria and some international generic indicators, and it has to be adapted locally with a process which is really clearly defined and including stakeholders. But the core requirements are defined by FSC. In PEFC, we are more than in a bottom-up approach, meaning that PEFC gives some guidelines for elaborating sustainable forest management standards, but the creation is done by the local initiatives according to the guidelines of PEFC. Of course, the 2 schemes endorse or validate the final documents, but the approach is not the same. It's coming from the FSC for the FSC and from the national initiative for PEFC. Let's talk about the legality certification scheme. The 3 mains which does exist are OLB from Bureau Veritas. The OLB is attesting the legality of logging operation at the forest level and the origin of the certified products up to the first processing, and the traceability after of the certified timber into the different supply chain. There is 2 standards, one for logging company, so at the forest level, and one for the chain of custody. The TLV, timber legality verification of control union is a certification with three purposes: certifying the mitigation of the risk of illegal logging, so certifying the due diligence system of a company, certifying the legality of logging operation, and certifying the timber traceability. This is a chain of custody. So there's this a system which have three certification in one, let's say like this. The legal source is the one developed by Preferred by Nature, which is mostly a certification which attests the due diligence system performance and the mitigation of the risk of illegality. And in this system, there is one appendix dealing about operation in forest at the forest level, but legal source is not presented as kind of a forest legality certification, but better a system certification about the way of the company is mitigate and manage the risk of illegality. Few words about the last confusion that can exist when you are supplying wood, and specifically from Central Africa. This is a confusion which may appear with some VPA, the FLECT VPA, Voluntary Partnership Agreements, which are these agreements which are concluded between European Union and producing countries. In some VPAs, FLECT VPAs, for example, Congo and Cameroon, Republic of Congo and Cameroon, there is a step into the timber legality assurance system which issue a legality certificate, and it may be confused with a third-party legality certificate. This legality certificate issue inside the VPA process is based on the verification of the country legality grids, because each country has to define a legality grid to define the legality. But it is not a proof, a full proof of legality, because it has to be added with a traceability verification in order to issue the FLEX licenses. So it is kind of first step before the FLEX licenses, so it has to not be confused between them. And also, what is very important, a legality certificate within the VPA process is not third-party verified. So it is not the same level of verification than a legality certificate issued by a third-party certification like OLB, TLV, or legal source, and so on. And this is the same for the Indonesia scheme, the national certification scheme, the SVLK, which is a national certification within the FLECT VPA of Indonesia. Again, it is not an independent certification scheme like private certification scheme. Okay, we finished with this overview of certification scheme. I hope things are clear, but we will see in the case studies some way to go deeper in some explanation of some specificity of the certification, forest certification functioning.